how is it that we're going to be even approaching these sellers so that we can get these deals done? Well, I tried to make the deal sweet enough that I can close right away. But if they're like, no, I got to get 15 grand down on this, I might not want to do that. I might want to go line my buyer up first, knowing that I'm going to get 25 or 30. So in those cases, we're like, okay, well, we'll take those terms out to our market and see. I'm going to need a little bit more time to close than just like closing next week like I could do if you sharpen the pencil a little bit. We don't change the price, but if you got to have that big old down payment, I want to make sure that my people can fund this thing. So I'm going to put 90 days in here. We'll, work to close way quicker than that. I don't want to be messing with this thing for 90 days, but I also don't want to go spend my money, my time, my energy, my resources looking for my buyer and then have the rug pulled out from under me because, you're expecting it to close in a couple of weeks. Hopefully it will. But we just standard use 90 days because that's usually more than enough time for us to line up our buyer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to close with you. We're going to be your buyer. We always will be your buyer. But I don't want to close with you as your buyer until I found mine. That's how I make money. The difference between what my buyer gives me and what I give you. Now, I probably already have them in my queue, but I don't know. I'm going to go out to them and find out as soon as we have an agreement. In addition, I'll have my team launch a massive campaign as we always do. And there will be no unturned stone as far as the marketing that we're going to do. And our goal is simply to get more from our buyer, like I mentioned, than what I'm going to be giving you. And that's how I'm going to get paid. Okay, it's not from you. You're getting this great deal on this house. But because my market of buyers is so large, when I can offer a house with terms while I'm getting them qualified for the loan that gets you paid off at a much higher net than you would get otherwise, that's how I make money, is actually from the buyer, from the loan that ends up coming in. You don't pay me anything. I'm paying you. That's the difference between me and a realtor. Now, if you want to go the realtor route, because I happen to have a license or have people on my team who are licensed, we can also sell it the traditional way, and you'll net higher with us than you would selling the traditional way with anybody else. But if you want to get the most money out of this house, you should do it the way that I'm talking about. Fair enough? Seller then removes whatever marketing they're doing. We get their permission by email to use the MLS, or we could put it in our contract even, do both. And then that's the one prong of our attack, is we throw it in the MLS with the way that I'll show you, the way we advertise these properties. You can use my disposition team as prong 2, and then we run hyperdrive, 3-pronged attack. And you'll have buyers coming out of the woodwork trying to throw money at you. It's just a matter of who you're going to choose, because all of them are going to have a little bit of hair on them, so to speak, a little bit of ugly on them. This person's got a lot of money, but they got a criminal record. This person has less money, but just like they've just been perfect everywhere. And you just kind of make your determinations on who you're going to put in there. For me, the more money they put down, the safer I feel, because ain't nobody going to mess up the house after they put all that money down. So, and then we just have to ensure that we have access so that we can show these houses. Okay, but this is how we approach the sellers, pretty much what I just did. You could listen to the tape last night when I did that little thing, and then you listen to it tonight from here. Play this slide right here. That's the way we talk to the sellers. I don't even have a script in front of me. You can use the script, but sometimes it's better just to be able to speak from your heart. But as long as you have the skills and you understand conceptually what we're trying to do. The script is fine. Use the script, but after a while you won't have to. Now, once we have the agreement, we best check and make sure of what we're agreeing to buy and from whom. So we run a title search, like a little abstract. You can get that from a local title company for probably $75, oftentimes free if you've dealt with them before. Or you can cheat and do it real quick by going to this website right here. You can try it, now. Try it, Pro Title USA. Enter your own address in, see if they pull you up as the owner. Some of you, I had somebody do this one time in here, and they found out that their wife was still on the deed, and the guy got all pissy because because he thought that she was off the deed because he was awarded it was the other way around. The wife thought that because she was awarded the house in the divorce that the husband was off the deed, but she didn't know that she had to go and get that husband to quit claim deed his interest over so that title was cleared to her, and they had been divorced for a few years already. You might be careful what you wish for. You might find some things out. You might find you have a mechanics lien on your house. I had another incident where someone did this. They're like, holy crap, the damn pool contractor from 3 years ago never removed their lien. Anyway, go check that out. It's pretty cool. It's not, it is free like the first couple times you do it, I think, and then they try to, get you to pay. So you might have to use like an incognito browser so that you can get as many free tries as you want. But to get a more thorough report, I think it's like $99 if you want to do it really fast. We use that three-pronged attack once we know that title is good, meaning our agreement is good, it's closable. And what I'm basically saying is we want to make sure that everybody who is on the ownership of the house, on the deed of the house, signed our agreement to sell us the house. That's all we're really looking for at this point. And then we're just making sure there isn't any weird judgments, big IRS liens, things like that. It's not like a full-fledged title, but it gives us, enough confidence that we could go out and run our three-pronged attack. MLS, My Dispositions team, if you want, it's free, and Hyperdrive. You probably just need MLS with as hot as the market still is. Even in declining markets, people are still looking, especially for deals like this. Now, when it's ready to be closed, we're going to set this up with a competent lawyer, and if needed, a title company, and we aren't going to be getting all happy feet about it. Okay? Don't be counting chickens before they hatch. Not the way to do it. What's in the chat here? All right, there you go, Maria. I made her nervous for a few minutes. She was like, I know that motherfucker ain't still on here. That's my dyslexic cussing. I guess it's still offensive, so sorry for cussing, even though I didn't really cuss. All right, now I'm going to pander to the people who aren't going to listen to me because I've spent the last week or so trying to describe why I think you should just stay in the middle. But some people are just going to want to sign it and move on. Like it messes with their head, messes with their sleep, just worrying about things that can go wrong. And I can understand that. Everybody has like a different chemical makeup. I think it can be overcome. So if you're not wanting to stay in the middle and you're just going to assign it and forego all the potential later profits that you could get and take the other risks that your buyer screws over your seller and then you got egg on your face, then here's what you're going to do. You do what I suggested earlier. We're going to reach our seller. This would be in the case of if we have a lease option with our seller and then we went out and got a better lease option from our buyer and there's spreads there. It might be so tight that that's why you want to assign it, but we're going to have a better agreement with our buyer than the one we gave our seller. So there's a lot of reason for us to be able to go to the seller and give them the benefits of assigning our buyer to them, like I described before. It's a better contract, and it's the direct collection of payments, and it makes it easier for the deal to be closed when the buyer is actually dealing directly with the seller, which is you, instead of me being in the middle on a sandwich lease. And then what we do is we just assign our buyer's agreement to the seller. We get a release from our original agreement with that seller, and we collect the assignment fee from the seller, which was the payment that the buyer made through the seller to us, and the deal actually mathematically stays the same as what we had with the seller, but now it's what remains with the buyer. Play that back a few times and see if it doesn't give you a headache. And if it does, message me. I'll explain it to you again. If for some crazy reason the parties just didn't want to move forward with that, then just stay in the middle. Ain't no big deal. You don't have any risks. The good news is this, is if you do get in that situation, which you're not going to be in that situation, every seller's going to take that for sure. If they don't, I'll get on the phone with them and convince them. The good news is, look, you're going to luck yourself into a higher profit if for some reason they weren't willing to do it, because you're going to be getting debt paid down. I don't know if you'll get appreciation or not. It depends on what the market does. You'll have added cash flow. And then again, if the buyer doesn't end up closing down the line, you're going to be able to get additional non-refundable down payments, option fees. It's a good day when that happens. That's why you should stay in the middle. Now, let me just explain it again here, okay? Let me explain it again. Why do we reverse our assignments and sign to the seller versus the buyer? Go quickly this time. The buyer of the house, first of all, would prefer to be actually named in the agreement with the seller versus just giving us a bunch of money to take over a contract where we're actually the buyer. That's the way an assignment would work. They just have this assignment of an agreement that I have to buy from the seller. That buyer is going to be much more comfortable if they're directly under contract with our seller, because we end up having an agreement with the buyer that we assign to our seller, and then the seller can show when the buyer ends up going through underwriting that they're selling the house directly to the buyer. So also, I actually prefer to keep the buyer out of my business in the sense of knowing what my deal was with the seller. I don't want to assign my deal with the seller to the buyer. I'd rather get the deal with the buyer and assign it to the seller, and then the buyer isn't having any post-purchase dissonance over, what do they call that? Buyer's remorse, over paying too much or something like that. And then importantly, the buyer's gonna have a far easier time getting their down payment or option fee applied to the price because the money's going through the seller. If they exercise their option and qualify for the loan, the money actually went through the seller, and the seller's the one who paid us. And then you avoid this whole issue of banks generally looking at assignment fees as exactly that, assignment fees, not as down payments. Can it be overcome? Yes, but it's a pain in the neck. You don't want to have to do that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line. So as the seller, per my contract with the buyer, it's far more clear that I'm not acting as an agent, right? By just assigning my seller agreement to the buyer and never having the intent of buying the house. So, there's a lot of reasons why this works better. Now let me cover a few more things here with y'all. Okay, we had all those technical difficulties, so I apologize for keeping you long tonight. Let's just do these last 3 slides here. I won't keep you too long. Okay, so I want to go deeper into this topic. Remember, it is still a rental agreement. It's a lease agreement. It is not yet a sale of the house. The deed hasn't transferred. We say, oh, I sold my house. Yeah, you have an agreement for the sale of your house, but it's not sold yet. There's a rental agreement and there's a purchase option. So it's still just a lease that's really in effect right now with an optional ability to buy the house. When that happens is when the deed transfers. So it's an option to buy the house and get the deed at some point during the lease. Now we intend to make these monthly rental payments until we buy or until our lease expires. If we do buy, it's just a regular cash sale, like a regular sale. But the thing is, we're actually not ever going to be buying the house because the only time that we would be exercising our option is simultaneous with our buyer exercising their option. So we might buy it for 15 seconds, if even that, a split second. We're simply subleasing the house to someone who might buy it. That somebody is going to have time to qualify for a bank loan. When that bank loan comes in, it's going to be enough where they can exercise their option from me, which is enough for me to pay the seller off and walk away with the difference simultaneously. Okay, so to do this, we've got to have a few things. We obviously have to have the right to sublease the property. We're not going to live there. And we've got to have the right to resell it. And then clearly we've got to have a purchase price from our buyer that exceeds what our price is with the seller. 90% of the time. There's ways you could do it where you had a lower price. I don't want to confound the issue, but you're going to need most of the time a higher price from your buyer than what you have with the seller, so you can make that spread, or so that you can even consummate the sale without having to bring money to close. Now, we're also going to try to have these things in place. Obviously, we'd like to have cash flow, free cash flow, a higher monthly payment coming in from our buyer than we're giving the seller. We certainly want a shorter lease that we're going to give our buyer most of the time than what our seller gave us, unless it's negative equity and we're just going to let them have the full term of the underlying loan so that they can get the house because they went into the situation underwater. So we let them get the benefit of staying with it. So that might happen, but generally we want a shorter lease with their buyer than what our seller gave us. That's the duration spread I talk about. And then obviously, because this is our this is our first payday, we want a bigger down payment from our buyer than what we would give the seller, which is usually 0 to the seller, especially on a lease. Last I looked, and I tell this to sellers, last I looked, ain't no down payments on leases. If you want a down payment, then you got to sell it to me. You're willing to owner finance it? I'm willing to talk down payment. You willing to owner finance it? That means you got to give me the deed, then you can get a down payment. That's the way down payments usually work. How do we make money, guys, gals? It's a beautiful thing, this slide. The difference between what we have coming in up front from our buyer and what we're giving our seller. That's payday number 1. On a 2-year lease, how many monthly periods are there? 24, right? So if each rental period of a month brings in more money from our buyer than we have to give out our seller, then that's cash flow every month, or 24 monthly payment spreads in addition to our down payment spread. That's a good thing. So now we're up to like 25 paydays here. What about the price spread in the end? The difference between what our buyer owes us and what we owe the seller. There's yet another payday, a big one. And then what about this? We're getting credit for our debt pay down on our deal with the seller, which means that price spread gets bigger and bigger in the end, meaning the amount of money we owe the seller is less, whereas the amount of money the buyer owes us remains the same, creating an even bigger spread. A lot of times, the guy who gave me the down payment, the buyer, walks from the deal after a few months, a year, year and a half, two, and then we have a second chance to make more money all over again in the same fashion. Sometimes we have a long enough duration with our seller that when our buyer tells us they're ready to go, our seller's not expecting it. They think there's a long time to go before they get paid off. We go to them and ask for a discount on what we owe them, and they always will take it.